How are you enjoying coordinating?
All right, and actually we are live now. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the February 14th, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County House Delegation. Today on our agenda, we have a special guest, Congressman Jamie Raskin, and then we will turn to 6 bills that were reported out by 3 of our local committees. So we'll turn first to our special guest, Congressman Raskin. Thank you so much for being with us today. I know we are all looking forward to hearing from you this morning.
Well, you created a twinge of melancholy and nostalgia in me when you talked about reporting bills out. I hadn't heard that language in years. So good for you. I'm curious to hear what the bills are. It's been a long time. I mean, back when I was a state senator, I felt I was a real legislator. I kept getting stuff passed, that thrill and everything. And you don't really quite get that feeling being in the U.S. House of Representatives these days. But I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have got. We are hanging tough. The Democratic caucus has organized itself basically into a rapid response democracy defense squad, and I'm leading on the legal stuff. I'm the ranking Democrat now on our Judiciary Committee. I moved from the Oversight Committee to the Judiciary Committee as the ranking member. And so we are involved in a whole bunch of these cases. We're doing amicus briefs in these cases. Um, and yesterday, I got a letter from the Deputy Attorney General, Beauvais, the same guy who uh, basically tried to get the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District in New York to drop the corruption charges against Mayor Adams, and she refused to do it and got forced out. Then they went to the head of the Office of Public Integrity. That guy wouldn't do it. He got forced out. Then they went to the chief of the criminal division. He wouldn't do it. He got forced out. They're calling it the Wednesday night massacre, like what was it, the Friday night massacre with Nixon. Um, and I think another 3 people resigned this morning. Um, but anyway, that guy sent me a letter about these cases. And some of you may even have constituents, because I know I do, who are on federal boards or commissions. So, like, um, Ellen Weintraub was on the Federal Election Commission. They sacked her. They sacked the Democrats on the NLRB. They sacked the Democrats on the SEC. So Trump is firing all these people. That's a radical break from American history since the New Deal. The Supreme Court in the Humphreys executor case upheld defined terms for members of boards and commissions. Um, 6 years, 8 years, or whatever, but not. It's not it's not under presidential control. It's not treated like a press secretary or a cabinet secretary. It's independent. That's what it means to be an independent commission. And we've got that in Maryland too. So this guy, Beauvais, wrote me a letter saying we're not going to defend these statutes anymore. It's unconstitutional. The president controls everybody in the executive branch, including the people on the independent boards and agencies. So I was like, oh my God, these people get sacked, they bring lawsuits, and um, against their illegal firing, but DOJ is saying we're switching sides. We're not going to defend these statutes. We're going to defend the president, of course. So now the question is, well, will Congress defend these statutes? But of course, Mike Johnson's not going to do it, and the Senate is not going to do it. Who's the Republican majority leader in the Senate? I forgot.
John Thune.
Soon.
Thune, right? Thune's not going to do it. So anyway, but the Supreme Court has said that individual members or the minority caucus doesn't have standing. But I want to test that in this case, because then nobody's defending the constitutionality of these statutes. It's an important point, and it does relate to a whole bunch of our constituents in Montgomery County. So in any event, we are winning in court. We've won more than a dozen cases. where there are TROs or preliminary injunctions. The Judge Engelmeyer in Southern District, New York, handed down a decision freezing their assault on the Treasury payment systems and saying turn over whatever they've got. That's one that obviously freaks everybody out in the country because they could have the IRS data on all of us, on 300 million people, on all of their political opponents, all of the reporters, all of the judges, all the prosecutors. We're winning an FBI case where they demanded a roundup of all the FBI agents' personal data who worked on the January 6th prosecution. So we got a freeze on that. I mean, that's just pure vindictive retaliation. We're expecting they're going to fire them or a lot of them, but it's 6,000 people. I mean, you'd fire basically half of the FBI's, working agent force. They sacked all of the J6 prosecutors in DC. The U.S. Attorney in Washington did that. I mean, complete violation of the civil service and the First Amendment. Nothing's happened on that one yet, but the AID case, which affects a lot of our constituents, we've got an injunction there against the termination of people's contracts and forcing them into paid administrative leave as a way to, as a prelude to getting rid of them. So we're winning in a whole bunch of the cases, which is good. The rule of law is holding, but Musk and Trump are basically calculating that when they get up to the Supreme Court, that Thomas and Alito and everybody will just reverse everything so they can withstand the PR hit of losing all these cases. But they are starting to talk about impeaching judges at this point. But look, in the big picture, I'll just tell you, I think that we are in an unfolding constitutional crisis. And I mean, Trump obviously has spectacular disrespect for the rule of law. But with Elon Musk, something I think more profound is going on. And I say this based on continuing conversations I'm having with people in Silicon Valley who basically say, this is a guy who grew up in apartheid South Africa, who just, by the way, got Trump to override his own executive order banning all refugees from the country, people who have a well-founded fear of political repression or religious repression if they were sent back to their study. But they overrode that to carve out an exception for white Afrikaners to come in the country. So anyway, but like that was sort of the defining formative political experience of his life. Then he went to Canada. He was a Canadian citizen, and then he came to America on a student visa. The student visa lapsed because he dropped out of school, but then he just started working. He was an undocumented worker for at least a year, which I've used to try to get them to slow down on their massive roundup and deportation plans. Of course, a lot of people on our side are saying, maybe we got to rethink that whole undocumented immigrant thing when I tell them the story about Elon Musk. But anyway, this is a guy who belongs to a coterie of Silicon Valley billionaires who believe that democracy is obsolete. And we are living in a post-constitutional period where the Constitution doesn't bind anybody and democracy is finished. We're living in a time they think of the kings and the strongmen, the czars, the emperors, like the old days. And Elon Musk can't be our president, at least under our constitutional regime, but put in nearly $500 million into the campaign and has bought himself a co-presidency. But they, according to my Silicon Valley sources, Musk has contempt for Trump, and he demonstrates it, like bringing his son on piggyback to the Oval Office and speaking over the president, interrupting him, and so on. They think that Trump is a clown for good reason, and they think that he's the pathway for them to move us into a new authoritarian techno state. And, the guy who helped start PayPal is seizing control over the payment systems of the country in all of the federal departments and agencies. He's shutting down departments and agencies that have active live investigations of his company, which apparently operates with criminality and presumed impunity because, like Trump, he thinks he's untouchable by the law. So I don't mean to bum you guys out, but it's not just as easy as let's get rid of this clown, Donald Trump, who just has some very crafty political skills. There are people who really think that this could be the end of democracy for us, and that we're living in the age of Putin and Orban and Xi and Kim Jong-un and the strongmen, and they're going to put us on that side of things, and human rights be damned. Um, you know, wherever they want to take over Greenland, they'll take over Greenland. They want to take over Panama, they take over Panama. Um, to hell with the Palestinians. They will be, completely removed from Gaza, and they view that as just superb waterfront real estate property, as Trump keeps talking about it. So um, there's been tremendous popular anxiety and fear, as you know, but also increasing um, courage and determination and conviction. And I'm convinced that people understand the stakes here. And I'm just telling everybody, we're in this thing for the long haul. When they start by asking me, what can we do? I say, the first thing is you've got to take care of yourself and your family. And I'm speaking to myself as much as them. I mean, this week was an experiment in sleep deprivation for me. I've been slept this little since the impeachment trial of Donald Trump. And then I sprained my ankle yesterday, I think, or at least I've got an ace bandage and ice on it right now because it's killing me. But the body keeps the score, like they say, so you got to take care of yourself. We have to take care of ourselves because this is not a 2 week or 2 month effort. I mean, this is going to be the struggle for the next period of our lives. And I'm grateful to you guys. Maryland is such the shining hope for so many people. And I had a big group of parents of trans kids come and see me. A bunch of them moved to Montgomery County with their families because it's seen as almost like a promised land or sanctuary for trans kids. But even those people are afraid, and a lot of their kids are suicidal. And a lot of those families are talking about moving to Portugal or Spain. I mean, when we had that conversation, you could have knocked me over with a feather. Like, I never thought I'd be at a stage. I mean, people have been joking about moving to Canada for a long time, but I never thought we'd be at a stage where these families are asking for my advice. I thought they were coming to lobby me. They were asking for me for my advice on whether they should move to Portugal or Spain. In other words, how bad is it going to get? Like, we're kind of in that Orban sort of mode of Christian white nationalism is starting to pervade everything. But are we going to get to Putin's right? I mean, is it going to be like Pinochet's Chile? They're going to start rounding people up and they're asking me these questions. That's a heavy thing to have constituents asking you whether they should move to another country to keep their kids safe. But I said, look, the, they had their executive order. There were some legal victories we had against it yesterday in some other parts of the country. But they won't serve transgender adolescents anymore at Children's Hospital in Washington or at the University of Maryland, Virginia. They're not doing that because they're going to be, their money's going to be cut off. Um, so, but said to them, beyond that, I don't. They will continue to lambast and vilify transgender people, yes, but I don't see further, legal restrictions beyond what they've done in terms of the passports and no federal recognition, which is terrible enough. I mean, those are the things that are making the kids feel like they've got no future in the country. So ultimately, I just said, like, they're going to have to choose what they're comfortable with. But you are in a state where people in Annapolis and at the county level, we're going to be fighting to defend you every step of the way and to not let anything worse happen. And then obviously, if we can win in 2026 and cut this reign of terror in half, we can begin the long process of trying to turn it all around. All right, floor is open. Sorry for being so long-winded, you guys.
No, that was great. Recognizing first Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Congressman. It's nice to see you here. So I know we have not passed 1 month yet, but we got so many things happening on the national level. So sometimes when our constituents reach out to me, say, what can you do? And they said our congressmen, our senators are fighting for us on the national level. And at the same time, I think people are asking, what can we do? Like on the federal level, what can Democrat can do? For example, maybe win some support from Republican congressmen and then do something to rein the power of the president. That's first question. Second question is, 2020, where I in 2026 as well. Is there something we're going to do to really win back some support from some battleground states and the district to get more congressmen, right? More representative on our side.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Delegate Wu. Let's see. In terms of what everybody can do, I mean, some people have been asking me, well, like, what about a national march, like a women's march, which was so powerful? I still feel that they pardoned 1,500 insurrectionists, including hundreds of people who were convicted of violently assaulting Capitol officers and police officers and federal officers. And I believe Trump views that as his private militia. Like, these are his reserve army of stormtroopers. And I'm afraid if we did a huge march, they would come out pretending to be looking for Antifa, and they would provoke violent clashes with people there. So, on the other hand, these pop-up rallies have been fantastic, where 2,000 people show up on 3 hours' notice at AID or CFPB or the state capitals all over the country. They can't, I think, unleash violence in the same way that I would expect them to if we spent 3 weeks organizing for one big march. In terms of, what we're doing, the best we can do legislatively, just speaking to my fellow legislators here, is use the filibuster on the Senate side to block the worst stuff they want to do. You notice that Trump and Musk have basically avoided Congress. Part of it is that they know that the filibuster is there as a backstop on the Senate side, and part of it is on the House side. They only have a 2-vote margin, 217 to 215 now, that Elise Stefanik left and Mike Walls left and Matt Gaetz left. So it's like narrow, thin. They lose 1 vote, and they don't want to put the maybe half dozen members, or maybe call it a dozen, who are in Biden-Harris districts, who are Republicans, in a squeeze play on a lot of stuff. So they don't care. I mean, they think that Trump is a monarch, and they read the first sentence of Article 2 of the Constitution, all executive powers invested in the president, which is Jim Jordan's favorite sentence. That's all they read, and they say, therefore, the president can do whatever he wants, which is just moronic. I mean, just read down further in the paragraph. What's the president's main job? Take care that the laws are faithfully executed, right? So that's a way of saying, Delegate Wu, we're sticking in the courts, basically. We're playing defense with our margins in the House, the filibuster in the Senate, and then we're going to court and trying to speak out publicly to set the frame of the defense of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But in terms of 2026, I'm with you, man. I went to 27 states in 2024. Our Democracy Summer Project which I know a lot of you guys know and have helped with. It's now in 42 states. We have 1,500 kids, part of it across the country, and we're hoping to double it for the 2026 elections. And, you know, I'm just going to be doing whatever I can. And now as the ranking member / chair of judiciary, you know, I'm going to be out there fighting for a lot of my members and other members of our caucus.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Congressman, it's wonderful to see you.
David, great to see you. And thanks for staying in touch, man.
Absolutely. So I know we had a conversation over the weekend, and I wanted to kind of push a little bit more on Delegate Wu's kind of question. So I'm getting tons of comments in my office on the budget and on how we balance the budget, and I am getting even more on this particular subject. So being specifically from Maryland and kind of a lot of the vulnerabilities that we have with the federal workforce, contractors, how heavily our budget and is dependent on those given democracy overall. Do you have a specific recommendation for people that you could kind of be concise on, that we could just tell our constituents? Because what I've had to say to them is, look, he controls the White House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. The only thing I can tell you, and I don't know whether this is a great answer, is if you have friends and families in other states, have them call their congressmen and women and senators in other states, particularly if they are Republican states or Republican members that are sympathetic to what's actually happening. I don't know what else to tell them. Do you have it? Like, what can we do?
No, that's quite similar to what I'm telling them, of course, with the added component that I'm involved in the litigation side. So I'm able to channel people to different lawyers or plaintiff classes or unions that are working on different pieces of litigation. But that's basically what I'm telling people too. I mean, our posture on the reconciliation is going to be this, which is, look, they do control the House and the Senate and the White House. So if they think they can do it without the Democrats, the way they do everything else, they don't consult us on anything. If they think that they can do it without us, then that is their prerogative. But if they can't get together within their caucus, which I don't think that they can, I mean, there are 30 or 40 members, for example, who've never voted, Republican members who've never voted to lift the debt ceiling, right, as a matter of principle. And I don't know that they would. They want to lift the debt ceiling $4.5 trillion. Now they want to lift it for another tax cut to the wealthiest corporations and people, which is like a non-starter for us. But our position, I think Hakeem's position, is going to be, if you guys have the unity to do it, there's nothing we can do to stop you. You go do what you're going to do. But if you need us, then we've got to sit down and talk. And we got to talk about all of these assaults on the federal agencies and departments, the seizure of the payment systems, and the attacks on the workers. And we're not going to keep the government open so you can dismantle the government, right? So we will keep the government open to keep the government open and working and protect the jobs of our people and the beneficiaries of the programs that we've appropriated money for. That's our basic posture, you know, which at least that's mine. That's what I would say. But we're going to have complete unity and focus. I mean, we're operating like Democrats in Annapolis. I mean, we're getting behind closed doors. You can say whatever you want. You can fight it out. But then once we've decided, then we go out, and that's our plan, you know.
Because I understand that Senator Van Hollen and I think also Brooks had a town hall the other night, and they had, what I heard, they had over 17,000 people get on that call.
I had 16,000 at the one I did
Yeah.
two nights ago. I think I saw some of you guys on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And colleagues, just being mindful of the Congressman's schedule this morning and our full agenda, I'm going to give our last question to the next person in the queue, Delegate Chi.
Actually, Julie, forgive me. If everybody wants to say quickly, I'll take notes and I won't be so long-winded. So I hate to leave people's hands up in the air.
All right. We'll try to go through these quickly then. Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Congressman. You make us so proud to be a Marylander. Thank you for your leadership and congrats on your new leadership gig. I'll make it quick. Just in the past few days, we have had several congressional reps offering town halls to answer people's questions, which is very helpful, but also many people did not get the memo in time. And I pushed out the last one by 2 US senators, but also many asking how they could catch up on the next round. Is there any plans for offering more town halls to answer people's questions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, this is just the beginning.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next was Delegate Miraku North.
Hey, Brittany.
Hope you're on mute.
You would think after all these years I would get it. Thank you, Congressman Raskin. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to ask this quick question. We've talked a lot about people, coming to town halls and coming to your office, but I'm concerned about the ones that aren't coming out of fear of, being detained, like that. And, I had a opportunity to speak at a a virtual event with someone from the University of Maryland. She was saying, this is a student, that they were trying to do like a Know Your Rights program and to bring more, Latino immigrants into the fold, and they weren't showing up because they were afraid. So what do you suggest that we do to try to provide information for those that aren't showing up?
Who are not showing up.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the beauty of Zoom is, well, first of all, you're able to have 16 or 17,000 people at once. We don't have rooms that'll hold that. But also the people who are afraid, and a lot of undocumented immigrants and their families are afraid. Also, a lot of the LGBTQ community are afraid now, and don't underestimate, the sense of fear and intimidation that they're experiencing also. Yeah. I saw Leslie and Aaron too.
Yes, I was going to say for our last 2 questions, next Delegate Kaufman.
Good, Aaron.
Okay, so just a 2-word, it's just more of a plea. As you know, there are 10 million people with disabilities on Medicaid, and people can't, Medicaid offers unique services that people can't get in insurance. And Chairman Arrington has talked about per capita capping Medicaid, which would be a disaster for people with disabilities and for and for our state budget, frankly. So just please stay strong in that regard. That's all. Trying to make it brief,
Absolutely.
Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Well, they're going to try to pay for their huge tax cut with these, savage reductions in Medicaid, and we're going to fight it every step of the way. And your voice is important on this, Aaron. So thank you kindly for reminding us.
Thank you, Delegate Kaufman. And finally, Delegate Lopez.
Thank you. I'm going to be as brief as I can here. So during the last campaign cycle, President Trump basically kicked the can down the road and said abortion is now a state's issue. But we've seen a national abortion ban introduced in the House, and there's also probably even more imminent is the talk about starting to reinforce the Comstock Act. Just wanted to throw it out there to see if you have any insights about what you might be hearing.
No, thank you, Leslie. Totally right. I mean, it's Speaker Johnson's bill. It's called the Life Begins at Conception Act. And you can't run around for not years, but decades saying abortion is murder, abortion's a genocide, abortion's a Holocaust, and then turn around and say it's a states' rights issue, which is not what the Supreme Court said, by the way. The Supreme Court said it's a political issue. They didn't say that Congress can't be involved in it. And that's part of what they were doing, of course. They want to, it's a very sinister operation because they want to keep an energized, active anti-abortion movement in order, to keep their coalition, but they want to pretend as if somehow they've stepped away from it. But what we're going to be able to fight it and stop it in Congress as long as our numbers hold. But the Comstock Act, absolutely, I would expect. I mean, this Attorney General Bondi is just a mad woman. I mean, the stuff they're doing is just unbelievable already. I mean, look at the way that they sacked all the prosecutors relating to the Adams prosecution. They will do whatever Donald Trump tells them to do, is the bottom line. I mean, they view themselves as the personal lawyers for Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know what we have done for this misfortune to have befallen the republic like this, that, where we've had great attorney generals from both sides of the aisle, Ed Levy was a Republican, a great attorney general, or Robert F. Kennedy, but like, this is just incredible what's going on.
Thank you, Delegate Lopez. Congressman Raskin, thank you so much for being here this morning. I know we would actually just love to just talk with you all morning long. I think that would be a lovely thing to do, and we're sorry that we have to move on to the rest of our agenda. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everything that you are doing on behalf of Marylanders and fighting for democracy, and we just are so appreciative of you.
Well, thank you, Chair Carr. And, my door's always open. You guys all have my cell phone, text me or whatever, and stay in close touch. And, thanks for that last round of questions. I'm sorry I had to go so fast. Bernice and everybody.
No, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so next we will turn to the next part of our agenda. We're going to start with the committee report from the Metro Washington Area Committee, turning it over to Delegate Mercury North for the first bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're proceeding on MCPG 11225. This past Monday, the committee did vote out certain amendments, but since then, the sponsor has new amendments, somewhat similar, but somewhat different. So what we're going to do procedurally is, even though we voted out the amendments and approved the bill as amended, I'm going to move to cancel, what was the right word?
Unfavorable?
Move, thank you. I thought I had canceled my notes. Move unfavorably on the amendments that were brought for our committee on Monday, and asking for a second.
Second.
Okay, so the motion on the unfavorable on the committee adopted amendments was moved by Delegate Mercury North and seconded by Delegate Corman. And again, for everyone's clarification, the reason that we're doing this, and actually we're going to do this on another bill today, is because there are, we knew when we voted the bill out of committee that there were more amendments coming, and because of the overlap in the new amendments with the old amendments, it's just simpler to vote cleanly on the new amendments that are going to be offered by the sponsor. So questions about why we're doing this or what's going on? Okay, so people are good. All right, so all those in favorable of the unfavorable on the committee amendments, please say aye or raise your hand. And actually, sorry, everyone come on video. Give everyone a chance to come on video. We have some folks who aren't yet. So we'll hold this for a moment. Okay. All right, we're doing the vote now. All right, anyone opposed to the unfavorable motion? So the unfavorable motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And because these are new amendments brought by the sponsor bill, I'm going to give the opportunity for Delegate Corman to explain what those new sponsor amendments are going to be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you should all have in the Google Drive a reprint that incorporates all the amendments. It's probably easiest to work through the reprint. So I will just go through it, and however the chair's pleasure in terms of taking questions as we go or just at the end. But the first change in the reprint is the short title. At the request of WSSC, we changed the short title of the bill to the WSSC Planning and Reporting Act. Moving to the second page, there, as the bill came in, it proposed adding the County Director of Environmental Protection to the commission, replacing one of the sort of public members that the county executive appoints. The county executive told me he supports this provision with certain changes. So this incorporates all of those changes but one. The one that it doesn't incorporate is a change to the political balance requirements of the WSSC. That seemed like a broader conversation, but this does allow an exception, for example, to the residency requirement, and clarifies that the Director of Environmental Protection can serve as chair or vice chair of the commission, and has a voting seat. They're not just a non-voting member. And it also clarifies later in the reprint when this change will happen. It gives the county executive flexibility to make it happen at either of the next two vacancies, the next two terms that expire. So we're not removing anybody mid-term. WSSC in their revised position has no position on this provision of the bill because it's a governance question. Turning to page 4, this makes some changes to the stress testing provisions in response to requests from WSSC, the most significant of which is it removes references to the ad valorem taxing, but more on that later. So this provision now has, as I understand it, WSSC's support, or at least acquiescence. Pages 5 and 6 made some minor changes to the transparency provisions, what's posted on the WSSC website in response to feedback from WSSC. So I understand that with these changes, this has their support. The bottom of page 6, after consulting with the WSSC Office of Inspector General, this incorporates a provision clarifying that the WSSC Inspector General is independently budgeted. It doesn't go through the WSSC management. That's designed to strengthen the work this delegation did a few years ago when we created WSSC Office of Inspector General. Turning to the next page. So as the bill came in, there was a very large study proposed to be done by the Department of Legislative Services on WSSC in response to a lot of back and forth with WSSC. This has been broken into 3 pieces. The first piece is further work on the Office of Inspector General, but instead of having that studied by the DLS, it requires a peer study of the Office of Inspector General. So that's what is reflected on in 17-610. Turning to the next page, which is numbered page 11. We made, as you recall, the bill came in with intent language regarding fixed monthly billing in response to feedback from several of you and some Prince George's colleagues and some members of the public. This was changed to intent for fixed billing, but not specifying that it has to be monthly. So there could be a different way to do it, bi-monthly, quarterly, what have you. And then also clarifies that we're not taking a position on the technology that would be used to do this. So it says that it's technology neutral. The next section after that, there had been language when the bill came in about basically removing the caps on high bill adjustments when there's a high bill that WSSC can't explain. They currently will sort of do a high bill adjustment. The bill came in lifting that. WSSC had a lot of concerns about that and the potential financial implications. And so we put sort of 2 reporting requirements in place instead, so we can kind of watch the issue. One is just a report on how many high bill adjustments sort of would have qualified if we had adopted the provision. And the other, which appears a few pages later, WSSC, took a lot of time looking at some of the cases that I provided them and realized that there were things they could do differently about how they do the customer service process with the high bill adjustments. And so they asked if they could provide a report on the changes they are proposing on that regard and the implementation status of that. So you'll see that appear a few pages later. On the middle of page 7, there's this provision about Avenel that remains. Delegate Wallach, Delegate Warman, and I have been doing a lot of work on this issue along with Senator Love. That is not resolved with WSSC, but I've discussed with Chair Polakovich-Carr and Chair Merrick North that we will continue to work on that issue. And the language as you see it here will not pass out of the standing committee if this makes it to the standing committee without further consultation with the delegation. And I can talk more about that in a moment. At the bottom of that page is the language I mentioned about when the change to the commissioner appointment will occur. On the top of the next page is that part 2 I mentioned on the high bill adjustment studies. Then the middle of that page is the section on an ad valorem tax study. As you all know, WSSC has a backstop in state law where if they cannot make their debt payments based on their revenue, an ad valorem or property tax can be done to serve as a backstop. This is sort of a study and a report on what the implications of that would be if it ever came into effect. We worked very closely with WSSC on a lot of the language you see here at the top of this, notwithstanding recognition by the General Assembly that the authority for WSSC to consider an ad valorem tax in accordance with the law has never been used, and they have no intention of imposing it. We still want this information. They provided something like this once before, had something like this done once before in the Great Recession timeframe. WSSC, though, has not yet taken a position on this section of the bill. They have to bring it to the commission, and the commissioners have not met yet to consider their position on this. The next section down, we had, again, a large DLS study that was originally in here. It was been broken into 3 pieces. This piece are some issues that WSSC did not think were appropriate for a peer review, did not think were appropriate for the Office of Inspector General to review. And so we came up with this third approach modeled off of another piece of legislation related to one of our state licensing boards, where WSSC will hire an outside consultant in consultation with DLS to look at some of these issues that are really more into the governance space, so not really appropriate for the Inspector General to do. Finally, if you turn to page 8, This is kind of what remains of what was originally the DLS study, and these are all things the Office of Inspector General at WSSC can do. So this is sort of the third piece of the study. So procedurally, as you all know, this bill, in addition to going through this delegation, has to go through the Prince George's County delegation and then goes to the standing committee. If it passes the standing committee, then it goes to the full House. If it passes the full House, it goes over to the Senate to start all of that again with the Montgomery and Prince George's delegations, the standing committee, and the full Senate. And so for that reason, I asked Chair Polakovich-Carr and Chair Maricruz North's indulgence that we move this bill forward, even though we still have some outstanding questions and issues of negotiation with WSSC. Again, I know the guy who runs the standing committee in the House, and I have his solemn assurance that the bill will not move from there without careful consultation with the rest of the Montgomery County delegation. So with that, I would move the amendments, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. So the amendments have been moved by Delegate Corman and seconded by Chair Maricruz North, and we will open up for questions and discussion, recognizing Delegate Collison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So glad that you trust the chair of the standing committee, Delegate Corman.
He's the only one I do trust, Delegate Collison.
Got it. You said in the new set of amendments that there would be a fixed billing program. So how will that be determined, and how will customers be notified?
Sure. So it's actually an intent language. So it is the intent of the General Assembly that WSSC will move to fixed billing. And I think this had some support in our delegation, but this is actually extremely important for the Prince George's County delegation based on the hearing I had there. And the goal is to get WSSC to move on to that program. And so exactly how that will work is going to be left up to WSSC, whether it will be more meter readers, whether it will be new technology, of which there's lots of different options, whether it will be a self-reporting mechanism, the timeline of that, how they will notify customers, Delegate Collison, all that will be in WSSC's discretion. Obviously, we have some general oversight of them, but it's not being decided by us. This is just saying, look, it is time to move to a fixed billing system because that is much clearer for our constituents. Because oftentimes, I don't know about you, Delegate Collison, but what I find is the questions they have about bills are often resolved by asking them to look in the upper right-hand corner of the bill to look at the time frame that's covered by it. And many times, the reason their bill seems so high, not always, is because this bill covered 6 months and the last bill covered 2 months. And so those are very different things. But in terms of all of those details, that's really going to be up to WSSC and their management.
I would agree, with everything you said, I guess, and, I can live with this, but I am very concerned that there's not at least a timeline that WSSC isn't being asked to, move into that kind of a program. But as you said, we do have some oversight. So thank you very much. Thanks for your work on this.
Thank you, Delegate Collison. Colleagues, if there's other questions, please raise your virtual hand. I will say we have from WSSC, Monica Marquina, who is here, and I did just want to give her the opportunity to speak to the amendments and to where things are at from their perspective.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Polakovich-Carr. Good morning. For the record, my name is Monica Marquina. I'm the Director of Government Affairs. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted first to thank Delegate Corman for working with WSSC Water and HB 115. We have worked collaboratively since November to address many of the concerns that he has raised, but also to ensure that the legislation did not result in unintended consequences for the Commission, but more importantly, our customers, which are your constituents. The most recent set of amendments have not been discussed by the commissioners, but we intend to brief them next week. One item I did want to highlight that remains the same is the Avenel Coordinating Committee in Section 28-102. WSSC Water believes that this amendment is a result of actions the Commission took as part of efforts to evaluate the uses and disposition of property in its portfolio in decision to close an existing horse barn in the Avenel community located in Potomac, Maryland, on property that WSSC Water owns, due to extreme safety issues identified that could affect both humans and horses. WSSC Water, after assessing the safety conditions of the barn, determined that it could not use ratepayer funds to invest in the Avenel horse barn, which was a facility that had been promoted as a privately operated enterprise. We temporarily closed the facility, and in turn, as drafted, the proposed amendment will require WSSC Water to appoint a representative to serve on this coordinating committee. This, if convened, it was convened to serve as the purpose of resolving disputes related to an advanced wastewater treatment plant at the time the property was designed for that, which was considered at the time, and initiating arbitration and then litigation. A treatment facility is not currently under consideration. WC Water has led and participated in a series of meetings with community members, state and county elected officials regarding the Avenel property. And we remain committed to continuing a dialogue with these parties. And they have commenced in 2023. As currently proposed, as mentioned, this provision would accelerate arbitration and litigation inadvertently and prematurely contravening the legal review that is currently in process by WCC Water. Again, we're committed to collaborating with the parties and the community and reaching a balanced solution that aligns with the interests of community members as well as our ratepayers in both counties. And we will continue our meetings and engagements with the parties of the agreement, and we are happy to keep this body apprised of those efforts. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Monica. Recognizing Delegate Corman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think we need to litigate this here, but I just don't want it to go unstated that I disagree with many of the statements that were in that summary in terms of the origins of this provision, as well as the state of play between Avenel and the other stakeholders and WSSC. And when I say other stakeholders, there were legal agreements that around 30 years ago WSSC entered that are involved here. So we don't need to litigate it here. I will continue to try to work with WSSC to come to a sensible resolution, as mentioned earlier, but I didn't want those statements to go by without making it clear to folks that, and I think I see Delegate Warman and Delegate Wallach nodding, so I'm going to say on behalf of all of us in District 16, we just simply don't agree with some of what was stated.
Thank you, Delegate Corman. Colleagues, any other questions or discussion on the new sponsor amendments that are before us? Okay, a nudge for people to please come back on camera if you want to be recorded as voting.
Well, move the amendments.
Actually, Delegate Wims, they've already been moved and seconded, but
okay.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, so all those in favor of the sponsor amendments, please say aye or raise your hand. Sorry, I have to go to the next screen, make sure we're good. Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, the amendments are adopted unanimously. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Motion to move the bill as amended.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Delegate Miraku North, seconded by Delegate Wims. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all those in favor of the bill as amended, please say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Okay, that bill passes unanimously. Recognizing Chair Miraku North for the second bill from your committee. Chair Miraku North, are you able to come off of mute? Looks like she's having some issues. Ralph or Gabe, are you able to unmute the chair? Looks like I'm not able to do that. I don't know if, and we're having some other staff issues today. I don't know if our administrator is able to remotely unmute you.
Hi, Madam Chair. Sorry, I can ask her to unmute, but I cannot actually unmute her myself.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Please excuse my my mess up there. If you can just come back to me. For some reason, I don't have the other one directly in front of me, and I apologize for that. Just give me a minute. Thank you.
No worries. We'll circle back on that bill. We'll
Yes.
go next to the Economic Development Committee, recognizing Chair Foley for the two bills from her committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first bill is MC 16-25, which is a bill that establishes Silver Spring Purple Line Construction Zone Parking Improvement Grant Program. This is basically a program to compensate with a grant to compensate businesses that were adversely impacted by the Purple Line construction. And it's going to allow them to improve parking, as it says, but also to get advertising and some fare reductions or free fares on the Purple Line. And that's basically what this bill does. And again, it's a grant program. One thing before I move the bill, Madam Chair, I want to point out that in line 8 of the bill, it talks about for fiscal years 2026, which of course is this year, and 2027, the governor shall include in the annual budget an appropriation of at least $50,000 for this program. And I think, as was pointed out when this bill was introduced, you can't, this bill cannot mandate an appropriation for 2026 because we already have the budget from the governor. But we've been advised by counsel that the sponsor should go to the Appropriations Committee, and I believe she's done that, and make a request that that allocation be included. And in the event that it is not, that provision would become, that reference to 2026 would be moot. And we've been advised to leave it in the bill as it is. So I hope that cleared up that question that came up before. So with that said, I'd like to move MC 16-25.
Second.
Thank you. So moved by Chair Foley, seconded by Vice Chair Wims. And thank you, Delegate Foley, for that clarification about that language. Colleagues, questions or discussion on this bill? There are no amendments on it. Okay, so we'll vote then. All those in favor of MC 16-25, please say aye or raise your hand.
I'm trying to get on camera, Madam Chair. Having a little trouble.
We got you by voice,
Aye.
Delegate Kaufman. Anyone opposed? Okay, so that bill
No,
passes.
I'm not opposed. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay, no worries. Just a
Floater's
little
fine.
timing off.
Yes,
All right, that bill
voting
passes
affirmative.
unanimously. And Chair Foley, we'll go to the next bill then.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The next bill is MC 21-25. It's an alcohol bill. And what it does is requires the Board of Licensed Commissioners for the county to adopt regulations that include consideration of the number and density of retail establishments, as well as to promote public safety based on the impact of this density, and then to also consider public health when granting and safety when granting these licenses. And we do have an amendment to this bill. I believe it's in the drive. And so, Madam Chair, I am going to move the amendment to the bill.
Second.
And actually, sorry, Chair Foley, before we do that, so this bill had amendments that were adopted in committee, is that right?
Yes, this amendment was adopted in committee, and I should have said this, and I do understand that there is another amendment coming in this meeting, but people don't have it, so I thought it would be useful to move the amendment we have and then work from that for the amendment that is being contemplated here, if that's okay.
Actually, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm misremembering this. So I thought that the new amendment that was coming from the bill sponsor overlapped or conflicted with what was adopted in committee. Delegate Charkoudian?
I don't know because I haven't seen the amendment, Madam Chair.
Okay, Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to everyone for your patience with this. We did just work out this new amendment since the committee moved the other amendment. So it does actually replace the amendment from the committee, and I thought it was distributed to everyone, and I thought it was in the drive. Is that not the case?
I will let Ralph or Gabe jump in to confirm that.
Sorry for the difficulties. Yes, it was emailed out yesterday, and it is also in the drive. You will note that the amendment that was voted on out of committee is listed in the committee reports document. The separate amendment, which you will note has a barcode, is the new amendment that's being offered by Delegate Charkoudian today right now.
Thank you. So I think procedurally what we need to do is the same as we did with the Corman bill, where we would vote down the committee adopted amendment and then allow the bill sponsor to offer her new amendment. And sorry to everyone for how complicated today's meeting is procedurally. So if we could get an unfavorable motion on the committee adopted amendment, we can get moving along here.
So moved, Madam Chair.
I'll second.
Okay, so unfavorable motion by Delegate Kaufman, seconded by Delegate Ziegler. Yes, Chair Foley.
I'm sorry, I can't find this in the drive.
All right, and I'm not in the drive currently, but I will take a look here too.
If you can point me to the right folder, maybe I can find it,
I
but
think it's in the meetings folder. So if you go to the the House delegation meetings folder for today's date, it's in that folder.
okay.
Yes, I do see it in there.
Okay, I'll try to find it. I looked in the folder for the bill and I didn't see it.
Okay. Delegate Charkoudian, did you want to say something on this unfavorable motion that's before us at the moment, or are you waiting to be recognized to offer your new amendment?
I both. So
Go
I
ahead.
just, if I could just, because the committee did a lot of work, and so I just wanted to say that the thing we're voting down and then the amendment I'm gonna replace it with is just, the amendment I'm gonna replace it with is a more detailed version of the amendment that the committee voted for. So it's a procedural thing, but I want to acknowledge that the committee spent a lot of time talking about this. And I think the amendment that I'm about to talk about, that hopefully people will be able to see by the time I talk about it, is essentially in the same spirit as where the committee landed. And it has some more detailed language. And I'll explain that when I explain it, but I just want to honor the work that the committee did, because there was a lot of discussion that led to the amended version we're about to vote down. And so I just wanted to clarify that before we vote it down. What I have is just sort of one step further from where the committee got the bill.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the unfavorable for the committee adopted amendments. Is there further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the unfavorable, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, is anyone opposed? So the unfavorable is unanimous. And so now I will recognize the bill sponsor, Delegate Charkoudian, for a new amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll just remind people what this bill did is it required that the alcohol board in Montgomery County consider public health and public safety in looking at a new license of the density of alcohol outlets when a new license is being considered. Right now, based on state law, they are required to consider the impact of a new license on the businesses. Like it'll hurt the current businesses. They're allowed to consider whether it'll affect other things in the community, but they're not explicitly told to consider whether the density affects health and safety. The committee felt like the way that I had it written originally was kind of broad. They tailored it down. That was the amendment that we just voted down. After the committee sort of got us to that point, another member of the delegation reached out to me and said that he felt like it still wasn't detailed enough. So we did some additional work. And with that in mind, I'm offering this amendment. And so what it essentially would do is, if you're looking at it, you can see that in the general state code, the board is required to consider a number of things: the public need and desire, the number of locations, the potential effect of existing license holders on the existing license holder of the license for the new application, et cetera, et cetera. And then what we are adding in Montgomery County is, and I'm just going to read it because it's short: before deciding whether to approve an application and issue a new license permitting the sale of beer and wine for off-premise consumption, the board shall consider the impact of the volume of alcohol-related calls to the county's emergency communications center for immediate police or emergency medical assistance in the area surrounding the location of the proposed license. So it's very much in the spirit of where the committee got it. It just adds more specifically that the consideration is alcohol-related calls to the Emergency Communications Center. So with that, Madam Chair, I move the amendment.
Thank you. Is there a second for the amendment? Okay, so moved by Delegate Charkoudian, seconded by Delegate Ziegler. And so now we'll open it up for discussion on the new amendment. And actually, Delegate Charkoudian, I just want to clarify. So your new amendment strikes the entirety of the bills that came in, and then adds in the context of that existing, I guess, 6 provisions of existing law, and then that new language that you just spoke to. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Colleagues, questions or discussion on the amendment? And I'm sorry, did I just see someone's hand in real life as I was changing screens? Yes. Okay. Delegate Moon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the delegate for bringing this bill and the work of the subcommittee and delegate in tweaking the bill as you see here. I just want to put a little bit of history on the discussion because I appreciate this narrowed version, or not narrowed, it's more specific version of the bill that's before us. But I have to admit that I want on the record, I guess, some history of this issue and just a bit of discomfort I still have about, I guess, the direction that's contemplated here. And so I would just say all of the contacts I've had about this issue are coming from one neighborhood in my district. And it's a neighborhood that's on the border of Prince George's County and Washington, D.C. And the first time someone came to me about this issue, they were trying to get us in the D20 delegation to join in opposing a specific license, beer and wine carryout license, that was being requested, again, at the border of Prince George's and DC. And when I looked at a map of what the existing alcohol carryout was on that block, all of the existing businesses are licensed in Prince George's County, where they appear to have put 5 carryout beer, wine, and liquor, because it's Prince George's County, they also do liquor, and they put them all there on the border. And so here we have these complaints about public drunkenness and fights and things of that nature. But these folks came to the Montgomery County Board to request that we deny the sole beer and wine carryout license on the other side of the block, again, in response to these totally legitimate and pre-existing neighborhood concerns. And I guess a few things come to mind. One, Montgomery County does deny liquor licenses. We don't do liquor at these stores the way Prince George's does. Ours are beer and wine only. And under the previous density calculation, I started going through my head and looking at other neighborhoods in D20, downtown Silver Spring, Old Town Tacoma, where we had issued multiple beer and wine carryout licenses to help those businesses. And so I just want to be mindful of, what at least for me, what the genesis problem was that we're trying to solve, and whether we are in fact helping with some of those alcohol enforcement and public safety issues with what we're doing. And I have to say we can only control what the county delegation does, but it seems to me that the Prince George's delegation ought to be, and their licensing board ought to be implicated in some of this discussion, because again, from what I can see, the Montgomery County licensing board hasn't issued any carry-out licenses in that immediate vicinity of the conflict. So I just want to put this out there because we're contemplating a county-wide change to alcohol licensing policy. Other couple things I would note are the discussion is contemplating its end result is license denial. And I guess I just also want to say, and again, I know the delegate has moved away from this being this is a general public health and public safety bill. But again, I just want to say on the record that I am very hesitant to create a precedent where the county delegation is stepping in to intervene in individual alcohol licensing decisions. I mean, we generally do it to, put bills forward to let businesses have their alcohol licenses. But it would be the first time in my time down here that we've tried to intervene to obstruct a license. And I know other delegations do this quite regularly, but it's a practice and precedent that I'm not particularly keen to graft over to Montgomery County. So I'll just say all that and hope that this amendment is workable. I will also concede that if it's somehow not, or in addition to, I had contemplated and drafted an amendment to require us to work with the licensing board and our neighboring county delegations to generate recommendations on the full range of public safety issues, public drunkenness, public intoxication, urination, and it could involve more things like public bathrooms and better safety response and what have you. So I just want to put this all on the record so that folks have a little bit more window into the larger conversation that I think this is generating. So I'll just throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Moon. Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question for clarification in response to Delegate Moon's comments about setting a precedent. So are you suggesting that by accepting Delegate Chakudian's amendment, we would set a precedent by not granting licenses because of health and safety consideration for the public? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, it's a question. Again, because the genesis, for me, the folks that they're, in fact, I had a long meeting with the mayor of Tacoma Park, and what she was talking about was the times of public nuisance issues that I mentioned. I got contacted by one of the community associations in the Long Branch neighborhood nearby, and they were also talking about fights, drunkenness, and things of, people getting drunk at the park, things of that nature. So it's hard for me to detach the very neighborhood specific complaints that appear to be very related to this issue from the bill. But I say that fully understanding that my District 20 teammate is contemplating a very general countywide licensing change that isn't necessarily attached to that issue. But again, I just wanted on the record that I am not intending to at all get involved in these individual license denials, and I personally don't think it's a good direction for the delegation to go in. But again, we could pass this bill. I mean, probably this bill is not going to impact that individual licensing. It might be too late. I don't know if they already went and had their hearing and got their license. But this is the other question I started to have. If we are contemplating that this results in a license denial, I would like to understand who's going to get the denial and when. What exactly are we trying to steer towards a denial?
Thank you, Delegate Moon. Recognizing Delegate Charkudian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I just want to clarify. I think this is this issue of new licenses being considered in areas where, and I've talked a lot to law enforcement, where law enforcement is coming out and saying, here's the data that we're seeing associated with the density of alcohol establishments in this community. Law enforcement is saying, here's the pattern of behavior, here's what we're seeing, here's the broader research on the impact of density and the public health and the public safety academic research, and the board not able to consider that in their reasoning in the same way they're able to consider, for example, the impact of the new license on the businesses of the existing licensees. And this is a conversation I've been having in our district in Tacoma Park since before I was elected to office, just as a community resident and activist. So it is true, and I think Delegate Moon is referring to a specific license that was controversial in the last year or so. That license has been granted. I don't think that this will affect that license, if that's what the question is. I do expect and hope that this adds a criteria of public safety and public health, now with a much more refined data point, thanks to Delegate Moon for his input into that may affect other licenses, as we hope it would. We have a list of 10 things or 8 things that we tell the board to consider right now that could lead to either acceptance of a license, denial of a license, or acceptance of a license with some conditions. And what this would do is it would say, in a new license, in addition to the 7 things you already consider, right? We already consider the business interests on the other businesses. Now we're saying consider public safety, public health impact, but specifically with this data set. And I would just say that the committee kind of got us to, we should also consider public health, public safety. And now with this amendment, we're just going a little further and saying the way you measure that is with these calls for service. That's really the difference from what the committee did to where we are now. And I don't think it affects the particular license that I think Delegate Moon maybe got calls about, because that's been granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Foley.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question about the amendment. So the language says that the board shall consider the impact of the volume of alcohol-related calls to the county's emergency communication system for immediate or emergency medical assistance in the area surrounding the proposed location of the license. Over what period? Like forever? Like over 5 years? What? I'm having a little trouble sort of figuring out like how they would do that.
Delegate Charkoudian, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges that we've had with this bill and this language is we seem to be really torn on how prescriptive and how general we want to be. So there's, if you look at the current language of what the board considers, it's language like the public need and desire for the license. That's very general. The number and location of existing licenses, that's very general. The potential effect on existing license holders of the license for which the application is made. It's a little more specific, but it doesn't give us the data points to use. So my original amendment, which the committee passed, was similarly broad. It was the effect of the density on public health and public safety. I heard from members of this delegation that they would resist strongly something that broad. And so in an attempt to reach consensus on this delegation, I agreed in the last week since the committee did their work to make it more narrow to be police, the calls for service. I think that it is more narrow than it needs to be, but I still believe that the board has the ability to decide what range of time is considered. And there's so much of what we have in the alcohol statute is broad discretion where the General Assembly gives kind of general points that we want to be considered. I don't think it's necessary to go further and say in the last year or 2 years, if that's what would help move this bill forward, then I'm open to that. I already think it's a little too specific, but because I'm trying to work with making sure it kind of meets the values and the goals of several people on this delegation, it is this level of specificity. And if folks feel like, they need it to be within the last year, 2 years or whatever, I'm open to adding that by voice amendment at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you all. I don't know about everyone else, but the intra-district squabble on this has made me a little bit uncomfortable. What it sounded like was a sense that this bill was being introduced to shut things down, though apparently the license in question already got their license. My feeling with Delegate Charkoudian and all the discussions we've had in our subcommittee is that she's been trying to make a broad general thing for the entire county and that it wouldn't impact one single license anyway. But now this new amendment and Delegate Foley asking questions about it, the chair of our Economic Development Committee, I think this has to go back to the Economic Development Committee. And I am well aware that that means it would have to be considered next Thursday, addressed in delegation next Friday, the day after, so it can be ready for ECM on February the 24th or whatever that date is. But I just think we have 2 other Board of Ed bills to deal with, and I think economic development needs more time on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kaiser. And since you raised about timing, I'll just share with the whole delegation. So As some folks know, some standing committees do set deadlines for delegations to send letters one way or another on local bills. Alcohol Day and the Economic Matters Committee is on Monday. This bill is scheduled to be heard on Monday. Today is our last day to send a letter, whether supporting or opposing the bill or with any amendments to ECM. If we do not send a letter today, the bill will not be heard on Monday and therefore would not progress the session. Now, some folks, I'm starting to hear there's some differences of opinion within the delegation. Some folks might prefer that, but just letting everyone know from a timing point of view, this is the last day we can take this bill up in delegation. And Delegate Kaiser, your hand is still up. Would you like to say anything else?
I'm done. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify. I know that Delegate Moon raised the concern about this particular license. I do want to clarify that this is an issue that I have been hearing about and in conversation with this broader context, which was discussed in the Economic Development Committee, as Delegate Kaiser said, since before I was elected 7 years ago. So for me, it has been an ongoing thing. There was a particular license that the delegation was asked to weigh in on, and all of us actually agreed with Delegate Moon that it was inappropriate for us to weigh in on that license. So none of us did. I think Delegate Moon is saying he's worried that it could have affected that license, could affect that license. That issue is done. So I just want to clarify my intention and my understanding of this as a broader public health and public safety issue.
Thank you. Delegate Queen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to state I do understand the concerns that my colleague made, who also serves on the subcommittee, about the inner district squabbles about this bill. But understanding that this bill, I look at this bill as something that is a broader issue, and I think it's an important issue to raise. And understanding that this bill needs to pass if it is to go before ECM on Monday. And I think, as we've done with some of the other bills I've heard today, we've let bills go through that we know are going to have to get worked out later. And I would suggest that we consider that for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Queen. Recognizing Delegate Corman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, happy birthday to the bill sponsor, Delegate Charkoudian. Yeah, I was going to sort of second Delegate Queen's little modified motion there to say, we can always, I think, pull back the bill if ultimately this delegation is not comfortable with it, but I don't think we want to stop it on a process ground of timing because of the Economic Matters Committee.
Thank you. Delegate Wilkins.
I just wanted to quickly speak up in support of the bill. I think that at the end of the day, the bottom line here is us having stronger criteria and processes as something as important as these licenses are considered. I think that we have enough to move it forward and agree that it can always be pulled back. So I ask colleagues to vote in favor of this legislation.
Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo the comments of Delegate Wilkins, but I also wanted to echo the comments of Delegate Kaiser. As a member of the subcommittee, I actually think I like the amendment that we worked on in our committee better, that specifying or limiting things only to the number of emergency or police calls might actually be too limiting to the liquor board in terms of the considerations and things that we discussed. So, but I do agree. I think this is an important issue that we don't want to block right now just because of its timing, but I wanted to get on the record that I think the work of our committee was actually a little bit more expansive and allowable for the liquor board to consider different options other than just police stops or emergency calls. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Charkoudian.
Well, I don't know if this makes it more confusing. I'm really fine with either amendment, just for what it's worth. So procedurally, if we now need to move this new one and then go back and have a conversation, we can do that. Was hoping to address the concerns that had been raised after the committee voted, but I'm good with either one. But I guess I've officially moved the new one.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Moon.
Thank you, everybody, for the conversation. Procedurally, is it possible for us to make one word type changes to whatever, if we move something, is it possible for us here to make one word type changes to the texts we're looking at?
So to clarify, you're saying like to change a single word in the amendment that is pending
Yes.
before us?
Yes.
I
Yes.
believe so, because it is potentially a simple change. And I did check with our delegation analyst previously. We do allow amendments to amendments in delegation.
Well, let me offer two suggestions, and I would offer them to either of the amendments because it sounds like folks are interested in one versus the other.
And
If we
Delegate Moon, if
go,
I might suggest that we stick with the amendment that's on the table at the moment.
all right. So the amendment that's been moved is the replacement amendment, and we have already struck down the committee amendment. Is that the posture we're in?
Yes.
Okay. If we were to do the replacement amendment, and again, I'm just contemplating not to rush this and how these things will actually go. One thing that I'm seeing happening in the replacement amendment, and this was partly through some discussion with Delegate Charkoudian, is that it's contemplating the county pull 911 call data for every license applicant, essentially. It's possible that if you make it a may rather than a shall, they would only pull those call records where there's been a question raised about the volume of 911 calls or public incidents, rather than apply this to every single license application where, in fact, most of them, I bet, don't have these types of considerations. So I'll throw that out there. And I have a similar one-word alteration that would make me more comfortable if we do the version that was passed out of subcommittee.
Okay, and Delegate Moon, to clarify, are you offering that as a motion?
Yes, I would move to amend the amendment to say may rather than shall.
Okay, is there a second? I think I can second things. I'm going to second for the sake of discussion. So actually, I want to turn to some of the county representatives that we have on here. I don't believe that Amy Simon is logged into the Zoom, so I might put Melanie Wanger on the spot and just ask, first of all, has the county seen the new amendments, setting aside the additional amendment that Delegate Moon just raised, but that was offered by Delegate Charkoudian today?
I don't believe the county councilor, and I certainly not the county executive neither. I can speak for the county executive, certainly has not seen the amendment. Possibly Delegate Charkoudian shared that amendment with the council. I did not see it in my inbox, but that doesn't mean that it's not there.
Okay. I wanted to ask the question about, so given that this is saying, looking at the volume of alcohol related calls, basically to 911, do you have any sense of how this would actually get implemented? Like right now, does our 911 system, after a call comes in, is there like a logging system that happens of a call and what it was about and whether or not it was alcohol related, or would this be something brand new that would have to be created?
I unfortunately cannot answer that question. I'm just not familiar enough with the system. I could have an answer this afternoon, I'm sure, but probably not in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Recognizing Chair Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the amendment offered by Delegate Moon, why I appreciate what he's trying to do. I do think that undercuts what the committee was, had reported out and had worked on. We were clear that we wanted whatever this consideration to be on the health and safety to be a shall rather than a may. So while, the language of the committee was broader, it also said shall consider the impact. And I think by taking that out and then adding may to the emergency calls language really kind of negates, maybe it doesn't negate the bill, but it really does water down the bill. So speaking for myself, I am not in favor of Delegate Moon's motion. Thank you. Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Sorry for getting the dates on ECM's Monday wrong. Procedurally, I think we already vote down the subcommittee's amendments? I know we're on Delegate Moon's amendment to Delegate Charkoudian's amendment, but it also sounds like, and I heard Delegate Solomon say it, and maybe I think Delegate Foley as well, that we prefer the original amendment coming out of subcommittee. And so I mean, I guess I'm thinking we vote down the current amendment to the amendment, and then we reconsider the First Amendment and maybe go back to it. So I'm not sure where people stand, but I was sensing that those of us who worked on this for a while prefer the original amendment.
Thank you, Delegate Kaiser. Delegate Charkoudian.
Madam Chair, I can withdraw my amendment if that's what this body prefers to, if the body prefers to vote on the
And I'll
two.
withdraw my amendment to the amendment.
So I'm withdrawing.
Okay. Thank you. So before we go back to the First Amendment, I just want to say, at this point, I personally have some concerns about the posture of where this bill is at, and even the posture of the committee adopted amendment, which we rejected, which we could undo here. I think several folks did speak to the point of just allowing the bill to go ahead to have its hearing, and then we would have another bite at the apple. And I personally feel comfortable with that. So I guess it's kind of the will of our group whether we just want to let the bill go clean at this point, knowing that we absolutely are bringing this back up and we'll be, discussing this again and taking up further amendments, especially after the county has had a chance to take a look at what we're considering. But we could always revisit the original committee adopted amendment. I'll go back to the bill sponsor first. Yes, Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the work that the committee did was really quite good, and I would prefer to go in on Monday to ECM with that amendment. I think it's cleaner and ties better to what it is that I had intended when I first drafted the bill. So my preference would be that we move the committee's amendment, adopt that with an understanding that we may still need to come back.
Okay. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was my question, was when you said clean, I assume you mean with the First Amendment that the committee adopted. Is that what you were saying?
Or I was suggesting even without an amendment, but hearing the bill sponsor's preference on that front is helpful.
Okay.
Delegate Moon.
I hate to be a pest, guys, but we're Montgomery County policy nerds here. If we're going to do the subcommittee version of the bill and revert back to that, I would move that we do it with, again, a one-word change. And that's if we're looking at the density of alcohol licenses, we're looking at the density of Montgomery County alcohol licenses. I don't know how we can tie our county to the decisions of another county.
Thank you, Delegate Moon. Okay, so it sounds like there's at least a few folks who want to take back up the committee adopted amendment. And as our analyst, Jen Young, I almost called you Delegate Young, has said, we need a motion to reconsider that.
Motion to reconsider the amendment that failed.
Second.
Okay, so that motion to reconsider was moved by Delegate Kaiser, seconded by Delegate Foley. I think this is a debatable motion. Delegate Moon, did you want to be recognized at this point?
I mean, it doesn't sound like there's an opportunity to amend it if it's been moved.
Well, you can when we bring the amendment back up. We first have to reconsider the vote, and then the amendment can be offered again, and then you could offer your amendment.
Okay.
Getting through all the procedural hoops here today. Okay, Delegate Kaiser.
I'm done, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Delegate Vogel. Thank you, Madam Chair. I see the Delegate Charkoudian's amendment. Can someone tell me what the this amendment is listed under? Yes, so if you go to actually the summary document that was emailed by Ralph, I believe yesterday, that's entitled Montgomery County House Delegation has our meeting date, and then it goes through the reports of all the committees. That's the amendment for MC 2125 that if we do vote affirmatively on this motion to reconsider would be the amendment that we are taking up. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Delegate Wallach.
I just want to add that also as a subcommittee member, I feel comfortable with the amendment and the work of the committee that we put out. And if we are doing, pushing this forward for the conversation in ECM, that would be where I would be comfortable with us going for the record.
Thank you. So I don't see any other further hands on the motion to reconsider. So all those in favor of the motion to reconsider the first set of amendments, please say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed?
Aye. I'm in favor.
Yes. Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion to reconsider, and we got you, Delegate Mercury North, motion to reconsider is affirmed. So I will turn back to the bill sponsor, Delegate Charkoudian, to offer. Do we offer the amendment? I'm sorry, Jen, or do we now can have that amendment back on the table and it doesn't need to be moved again?
The amendment's back on the table.
Okay, so we're back to the original committee adopted amendment. Chair Foley, would you like to read that amendment to the delegation just so we're all on the same page?
Of course. This amendment, do you want me to read the whole thing or just the part that's different? Or do you want me to read
the part that's different, please?
The part that's different. Okay, I'll just summarize the first part of the amendment is, listing, I think as Delegate Charkoudian said in presenting the other amendment, what the liquor board needs to consider when they're deciding these licenses. And there are 6 criteria. And then there was language after that that says before deciding, and this is the language that the committee adopted, before deciding whether to approve an application and issue a new license permitting the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption, the board shall consider the impact of the density of existing retail establishments licensed to sell alcoholic beverages for off-premises consumption on the public health and safety of the community.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn back to Delegate Moon, given his earlier comments, if he wants to offer a motion at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to offer that we attempt that amendment that Delegate Foley just raised, the committee amendment, with the additional word Montgomery County inserted so that it's clarifying that it's the density of licenses in Montgomery County that is being questioned here.
So to clarify, we might insert that as the board shall consider the impact of the density of existing retail establishments licensed in Montgomery County to sell alcoholic
Correct.
beverages.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second on Delegate Moon's motion?
Second.
Okay, moved by Delegate Moon, seconded by Delegate Kaiser. Discussion, please.
I have a question.
Yes, Delegate Frazier Hidalgo.
If some of this concern is overlapping with the neighboring jurisdiction, does that not negate the interest of the community if we're not taking into consideration that border?
Is this a question for me?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it does raise that question. And again, if the problem you were trying to solve was the one brought by my constituents, it absolutely does raise that question. But then it gets back to my other question. Are we trying to be denying licenses? And if so, we should be very explicit about which license we're trying to deny and when. I do think this is eminently more complicated than at first blush, which is part of why I would suggest that maybe we study this with our neighbors, but that doesn't seem to be the will of the body.
Other discussion? I'll say I think Delegate Moon raises a good issue. I don't know why we would turn down responsible business opportunities in our county because of the actions of other jurisdictions. And the issue that was brought before us was for just Prince George's, but we border 2 other counties. This could arise somewhere else too.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else seeking to be recognized. So right now what we have before us is Delegate Moon's motion to specify that the amendment would be just for Montgomery County. So all those in favor of Delegate Moon's motion, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, so this looks like it's going to be a split vote. So when we get to the unfavorables, give me a moment so I can call these out so I make sure I get it right for those who are taking the vote sheets for us. All of those who are unfavorable, please raise your hand. So Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, Delegate Wallach, Delegate Kaiser. Am I missing anybody? Delegate Mercury North, were you also unfavorable? No, you weren't. Okay. So that motion Carries. So we're back to the amendment as amended. Further discussion. Okay. All those in
Move
favor?
favorable on the bill as amended.
I'm sorry, we actually still have the motion on the
sorry.
underlying amendment. Yes, but I'll take your motion in a moment, Delegate Kaiser. All those in favor of the amendment as amended, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, anyone opposed? So the amendment is adopted unanimously. Delegate Kaiser, would you like to offer your motion?
Motion to move the bill as amended and amended.
Second. Thank you. Moved by Delegate Kaiser, seconded, was that Delegate Foley? Yes, okay. Further discussion. All right, all those in favor of the bill as amended and amended, please say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed? So that passes unanimously. And again, colleagues, we will bring this back up, but this allows the bill to go on to its hearing on Monday. Okay, we're going to take up, hopefully quickly, we're going to go back to the last bill for Metro Washington, and then recognizing the time constraints, we may not get to our last committee report, but Delegate Mercury North, Chair Mercury North, if you'd like to speak to MCPG 112-25.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize, colleagues, for coming back to this bill. This will be quick. MCPG 112-25, Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission Services charges. The bills authorizes the commission to establish certain customer classes for certain service rates or charges. It requires the service rates for each customer class be uniformed for a given class throughout the sanitary district, and it authorizes the minimum or ready-to-serve charge, which may include an infrastructure investment component, and authorizes the minimum ready-to-serve charge be based on the size of the meter on the water connection leading to a property and any other criteria set by the commission through regulation. Class is defined as a class to include a class based on the size of the meter on the water connection leading to a property. There were two amendments. One was technical, just alters technical to the purpose paragraph and alters the preamble. The Second Amendment removes the authorization for WSSC to establish one or more customer classes for any service rate or charge. Instead, the commission is going to be authorized to create customer classes within any given meter size for the minimum or ready-to-service charge. The amendment also codifies existing practice, which provides authorization to allow for the infrastructure investment fee to be a component of that minimum or ready-to-serve charge. It passed out of Prince George's County favorably 16-2. It passed out of our committee favorably as amended. So I'm moving to adopt the amendments to the bill.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the amendments have been moved by Chair Mercury North, seconded by Delegate Cullison. Any questions or discussion on the committee adopted amendments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, anyone opposed? So those amendments are adopted unanimously. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Motion to move the bill as amended.
Second.
Second.
Okay, again, moved by Chair Mercury North, seconded by Delegate Cullison. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, anyone opposed? Great, that bill passes unanimously. Colleagues, in light of the time, I am going to put off our last two bills. My apologies to Chair Ziegler and to the bill sponsors. I would just say, especially for MC 7-25, I know there's folks have been sharing their thoughts with me. Given that we have to put this conversation off for another week, I would just encourage people to continue to reach out to myself, to Chair Ziegler, to the bill sponsor with your thoughts, and that will help inform our discussion that we have on that bill next week. Are there any committee announcements before we adjourn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Metro Washington Area Committee will be meeting. I believe we just have one item on our calendar at this point, but it'll be for Monday at 6:30.
Thank you. Chair Ziegler.
I just wanted to flag that we will not be meeting. The Education, Election, and Housing Subcommittee will not be meeting on Monday at 11. We will meet on the 24th at 11. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I know we're still waiting for some other bills to come over potentially from Prince George's County, and our committee chairs are waiting on those bills. Okay, any other announcements or anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn? All right, thank you all very much. See you on the floor shortly.